The California Dream for All program is back. And this round, CalHFA has made some changes that are designed to solve some of the problems they ran into with the first round. Some of the changes are popular, some not so much. Let's take a look. Before we go too far into what's changed with the program, let's look at what's staying the same and what made California Dream for All so popular the first time around. California Dream for All is going to loan you up to 20% of the purchase price or the appraised value to use towards your down payment or your closing costs. The maximum loan amount they're going to give you is going to be $150,000. You're going to want to talk to a loan officer just to see how the numbers are going to work in the market you're buying your home in. You do not have to take the full 20%. You could take 15%. You could take 10%. They're just going to cap it at that 20% of the purchase price or the appraised value. And the program is still a shared appreciation loan. What's that mean, right? Well, what it means is that California Dream for All is going to give you a fixed percentage you can use towards your down payment or your closing costs. And then later on down the line, when you sell or you refinance, you repay the original loan, but then you're also going to give them a share of the equity that you've gained in the property since you purchased it. So if you purchase at $600 and you sell at $750, you're going to give them a percentage of that $150,000 that the home is appreciated in value. The percentage that you share with them is going to be based on the original percentage that you borrow. So for example, let's say you borrow the full 20%. You're going to repay that original loan, but then you're also going to give them a 20% share of the increased appreciated value in the property. Again, you don't have to use the full 20%. So if you borrow 15% originally, you're going to repay that loan and then give them 15% of that appreciated equity. You can use the program for down payment or closing costs, but there are limits to how much money you can bring from your own funds. Borrowers are limited to bringing 5% of their own funds to use towards the down payment. So it's really important you talk to a loan officer just to see what the numbers are going to look like in the market that you're buying in. The same thing goes for closing costs. Borrowers are limited to 5% of their own funds to be paid towards closing costs. When we talk about that first mortgage, that purchase mortgage, they do require that you use the California Dream for All conventional mortgage. And that's actually a good thing. Last time around, the rates for this program were on par with the lowest interest rates for conventional mortgages that we saw. Hopefully we'll see that again this time around. California Dream for All cannot be combined with any other program. So CalHFA, for example, has a bunch of different assistance programs they offer, but you cannot combine any of those. It's only the California Dream for All products. It doesn't matter how much you put down, you're going to always be required to have an impound account for property taxes and homeowners insurance. So what that means is that every month you're going to pay a portion of your property taxes and your homeowner's insurance through your mortgage payment. And then when those bills come due in subsequent years, they actually make those payments for you. One thing I really like about the program is that they're using Fannie Mae income guidelines. And that's just a fancy technical way of saying that they're using conventional mortgage guidelines for underwriting income. A lot of times these assistance programs have special wrinkles when it comes to income underwriting. This program does not. Another great thing about this program is that they have higher income limits. And so a lot of the assistance programs are going to limit how much money you can make and still qualify to use their programs. For California Dream for All, the limits are pretty solid. For example, in San Diego County, you can make up to $185,000 combined and still qualify to use the program. It's really important, though, that you keep in mind if you were to qualify in one county but then move to another county to buy, you're going to have to qualify based on the new county's income limits. So every county is a little bit different there. And a good example of this is I've had a lot of clients that went up to Temecula or Murrieta to buy homes. Well, San Diego County to Riverside County, the income limits dropped by $35,000. So if you're making $175,000 combined or $180,000, you no longer qualify to use the Dream for All program. One other good thing about the program is that they allow you to have a relatively high amount of monthly debt compared to your overall income. That's the debt to income ratio you hear loan officers talk about. With this program, if you have 700 credit or above, you're going to be able to have up to 50% debt to income. That's on par with the highest you're going to be allowed to have with any conventional mortgage. It does drop a little bit if your credit goes down a little bit, but again, pretty much on par with most conventional mortgages. Now, as is the case with most of these assistance programs, you cannot have a non-occupying co-borrower. So that means that everybody that's going to be on the mortgage must occupy the property with you. You can't have a mom or dad who don't live in the home get on the mortgage with you. When we talk about the properties that you're eligible to purchase, it has to be a one-unit single-family property. So it could be a single-family home, condo, townhome. It can even be a manufactured home potentially. You just can't have a multi-unit, a duplex, properties like that. But you can have an ADU, so an accessory dwelling unit. So the way they look at ADUs is that they're not actually considered separate units. They're not a second unit on a property. So as long as the property shows as a single family residence with an ADU, you can definitely qualify to use Dream for All. Most of the assistance programs you're going to see are going to require that borrowers take at least one home buyer education class. Dream for All actually adds a second one on there. The first one's the standard first-time buyer or home buyer education class. And then the second one is going to be a California Dream for All specific class. They just want to make sure that you know the details of the shared appreciation loan and you know exactly what you're walking into. Only one borrower has to take these classes, and they can be done online. You don't even have to go in person, so it's not really difficult to knock that out. The California Dream for All program is a first-time home buyer program, meaning that every single buyer that's going to be on the mortgage must be a first-time home buyer. That means no ownership interest in a property, whether on title or on mortgage, in the previous 3 years. And at least one of the borrowers must be a current California resident. So you can't have an entire family relocating from out of state into California and have them expect to be able to use Dream for All. Okay, so now you know what's staying the same. What's changed? Well, there's been some pretty major changes. The first one, and probably one of the more controversial changes, is that at least one of the buyers must be a first-generation home buyer. And there are 3 components that make up the first-generation home buyer requirement. The first component of a first-generation home buyer is a home buyer who has not been on title, held ownership, or been on a mortgage to a home on permanent foundation and owned land in the United States in the last 7 years. The second component is that, to the best of the home buyer's knowledge, whose parents, biological or adoptive, do not have any present ownership interest in a home in the United States, or if deceased, whose parents did not have any ownership interest at the time of death. So that means that your parents cannot own a home currently, or if they've passed away, they could not have owned a home at the time they passed away. And again, that's biological or adoptive parents. The third component is actually an exception to the rule, and that is that any individual who has been at any time placed in foster care or institutional care is going to be considered a first-generation homebuyer. Now, CalHFA is going to audit this, and they're going to have you sign an attestation under penalty of perjury. So just be honest and be as accurate as possible. The second major change has some very positive pieces to it and has some pieces that people aren't that happy about. This time around, California Dream for All is actually going to allow pre-registration so you can try to reserve your funds. They're going to open a pre-registration portal sometime for about 4 weeks, probably in early spring. This is a huge difference and a major change because last time, if you're familiar with it, it was kind of like the Wild Wild West. It was first come, first served, and the money for the program dried up really, really quickly. So there were borrowers out shopping, expecting to be able to use the program when the money dried up. The part of this that's not as popular is that they're going to do a lottery-style random selection to select borrowers. It doesn't matter if you register on the first day that the portal's open or on the last day that the portal closes. Once the portal closes, they're going to pre-screen borrowers for eligibility, and then they're going to select borrowers at random. One cool part about this is that if you are selected, you are then going to be given a voucher, and you're going to be able to use the program for a set period of time. This is a very positive change because last time people were rushing to try to find properties. This time you're going to have time to shop around. They're also going to create a waiting list. So if you're not selected for a voucher on the first round, you'll go on that list. And if someone is unable to use that voucher, you'll be put back into that lottery style drawing. If you want to pre-register for the program, you're going to need a special pre-approval form for CalHFA that you get from a loan officer. So make sure you partner up with someone who knows the program so you can get that ball rolling. Overall, though, the great news about all these changes is that if you are selected for a voucher, from a seller's perspective, you become a much stronger buyer. Like I said, last round was kind of like the Wild Wild West. The funds were only available until they ran out, so there was no guarantee that you'd be able to use the program. Now, if you are selected for a voucher, the sellers will know that you will have the funding available, and they won't have to worry about you falling out because the funding dried up. They're going to be selecting borrowers for the vouchers from 9 specific geographic regions. Now, you don't have to buy in that specific region, but keep in mind, again, if you move and you leave the region that you're selected out of, you're going to have to qualify based on the new county you move to's loan limits. So just keep that in mind because that can impact whether or not you're able to move forward with the program. If you are selected, you have up to 90 days to go out and find a home and get under contract. The loan officer has to reserve the funds by the 90th day, and you can actually close after that. So you have almost 3 months to go shopping for a home. That's a major, major improvement from the last round. One really important thing to keep in mind, though, is that just because you got a voucher does not mean that you actually are pre-approved for the mortgage. You still have to meet the income, credit, and debt guidelines for the program. So if you get a raise or you get a new car or something major happens and you miss a payment on a credit card, all of those things could impact your ability to use California Dream for All. Now that you know what it's going to take to qualify for California Dream for All, let's take a look at a real world scenario so you can see how the numbers are going to work out. Let's say you purchase a home for $750,000. The California Dream for All loan will be up to $150,000, and that would leave you with the first mortgage loan of $600,000. Fast forward 5 years down the line, let's say your home continues to appreciate at around 4%. Your new home value will be $900,000. That means your home will have appreciated in value by $150,000. Your share of that appreciated value is going to be $120,000, and the California Dream for All share of that appreciated value is going to be $30,000. So let's say at that time you decide it's time to sell the home. You sell the home for $900,000. You would repay California Dream for All $180,000. $150,000 of that is going to be the original loan that you took from them, and then $30,000 of that is going to be the California Dream for All share of the appreciated value of your home. Assuming your mortgage balance is somewhere in the range of about $567,000, You would then have over $150,000 in equity that you would walk away with, you could put in the bank, or use towards the down payment on a new home. That $150,000 would consist of $120,000 that was your share in the appreciated value of the home, and over $30,000 that you will have paid the mortgage down in that 5-year period. One of the major concerns that I hear from clients is that they're worried about having to pay back a crazy amount of money to California Dream for All. Maybe they stay in the house for a long time and values go up, or maybe the values skyrocket. They don't want to have to pay back an exorbitant chunk to California Dream for All. But there are protections built into the program to keep that number reasonable. The maximum amount of the appreciated equity that you'll share is going to be 2.5 times the original loan amount. So let's use the previous example of $150,000 that you take. Well, you would end up giving them $375,000 when you sell or refinance. And I know that seems like a ton of money, but keep in mind, in order for that to happen, you'll have had to sell the home for $1.875 million. So even after you pay back the original $150 and you give them that $375, you're going to have a massive profit from the sale of that home. All right, so now you've looked at the numbers, you've looked at the program, you know the guidelines. Does California Dream for All make sense for you? We must take a look at the pros and cons. One major pro is that the Dream for All assistance loan is a deferred loan, meaning you don't have to make monthly payments. And also it is a zero interest loan. So you're not going to have to pay any interest on the original assistance loan that you take. Also on the pro side, because you're going to have a higher down payment, you're going to have a lower mortgage balance. Lower mortgage balance means lower overall monthly payment. And also because you have that high down payment, you can potentially either eliminate or really, really lower that private mortgage insurance, that PMI. So again, overall lower monthly mortgage payment. And when we look at the cons, besides the lottery style random selection for vouchers, there's not a lot of cons when we look at the program. One major con when it comes to this program is that you're not going to know exactly how much you're going to have to repay them until you go to sell or you refinance. There's no way to tell how much the home will have appreciated in value, so there's no way to tell what their share of that appreciation will be. Either way, you should still walk away net positive from the transaction, though. The only other major con that I see is for someone that might be in this for a short period, somebody who doesn't plan to stay in the home for a long period of time. Real estate is cyclical, and while we do expect to see values to continue to rise, there are occasional dips in value. So if you sell during a dip, it could negatively impact the profitability of the sale. Again, we don't really expect to see any major dips in the values of homes, but it is something to keep in mind when you're looking at the program. The California Dream for All program was very exciting last round, but it left a lot of home buyers disappointed when the funding dried up as quickly as it did. The changes that CalHFA have made solve that problem, but they do add a level of uncertainty with the lottery-style voucher system that they're using. Bottom line, though, is that if you do fit the criteria for the program, you have absolutely nothing to lose by throwing your hat in the ring and trying to get selected for one of the vouchers in your region. If you are selected, you are a much stronger buyer from a seller's perspective. You don't have to worry about the funds drying up on you, and you have almost 3 months where you can go shopping to find the right home for you and your family. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more tips and tricks for home buyers. And if you have any questions about this program or buying a home in general, drop them in the comments below or shoot me a call, 619-249-9140.